The general background of this study is, evolves out of an understanding that we've developed in this lab and in others of neuropsychiatric disorders, particularly those that are related to stress, that pinpoints an interaction between corticosteroids, or the stress hormones secreted by the adrenal cortex, and the excitatory amino acid neurotransmitters in the brain, like aspartate and glutamate, particularly in a region of the brain called the hippocampus, which is involved in learning and memory. But also seems to be very involved in sort of fine-tuning the reactivity of the stress axis. We know from various human studies, but also from a long history of animal studies, that prolonged stress and prolonged depression actually produce functional changes in the hippocampus as well as structural changes. Someone who's been depressed for a long time, if you look at a functional MRI of their hippocampus, it's actually shrunk, and that can be mapped on to the number of years depressed. So it's proportionate to the number of years depression the person has been depressed, and that treatment with antidepressants actually blocks this decline. There's three major receptors or ionotropic receptors, which are fast receptors for glutamate, and those are AMPA and NMDA, which are very well studied. And then there are the kainate receptors, which for mainly, I think, technical reasons, haven't really been looked at very much in the literature, either the basic literature or in the human literature. And what we found was that in conditions of chronic stress and chronic treatment with corticosteroids, that one particular subunit, the Ka1 subunit of the kainate receptor, was upregulated. Receptors do different things depending on their structure, but also where they're placed. And the Ka1 subunit of the kainate receptor in the hippocampus tends to be on the presynaptic side of the neural synapse. And what it seems to do is actually facilitate more excitatory transmission. And so this can be beneficial in things like memory formation and stress. In stressful events, it's very important to lay down memories of what worked if you survived the event. And so the brain is biased towards this kind of processing. The problem with that is that if you have too many stressful events, the system kind of overwhelms its own ability to adapt to the overflow of excitatory transmission and can have destructive effects on the structure of the hippocampus, which has consequences for emotion, for cognition, and all sorts of things.
Putting all of this together, one of the great hopes is that these changes in the hippocampus that happen with prolonged depression may not be signs of permanent irreversible damage, but they may actually be signs of plasticity that we can treat with appropriate medications and also behavioral therapies. And that, in fact, what is missing in a mood disorder is the ability to spontaneously recover, the resilience capacity, and we can help it along with appropriate treatments.